1. My dad owns a construction company, and during the summer I used to work there for some extra cash. Mostly my job was to clean and assist the supervisors with whatever they needed. It was hard work, with unbearably hot conditions due to Alabama summers. But it paid well and gave me something to do. I was the only female who worked there, so it was not uncommon for creeps to mess with me. Currently, I'm 24. This particular incident happened when I was 16, during the first year of working this job. Now, for those who don't know, construction companies usually have their own employed workers to oversee the construction, while other companies are hired to do specialty work, such as electricity, plumbing, painting, etc. So the job site is filled with complete strangers who are there to do their job and then go home. They rarely try to strike up a conversation with you, or even acknowledge your existence. Well, most of the time. We were in the middle of building a 3-story high church. There were 2 stairways, and my job was to scrub all the steps down with a toothbrush. This was tedious, and the easiest thing to do was for me to just sit on the steps as I worked. This meant I was unintentionally out of sight, and I worked quietly. I'm about halfway down the stairs, and there's a landing at the halfway point, where pipes and AC ducts are running through the walls. I could hear a man cursing to himself as he attempted to install a pipe. I could not see him yet, but I could hear him. I didn't give it a second thought, and continued quietly working. As I scooted further down the stairs, the man notices me. He begins to apologize, saying things like, "Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm sorry for my language. If I had seen you, I wouldn't have said it." I glance up at this and see what this guy looks like. He's obviously not one of our workers, but belongs to one of the other companies we had hired. He looks to be about in his 40s and is a carbon copy of Steve Buscemi, if Steve Buscemi was bald and missing some teeth. I reassure him that it's fine, and that I hear worse in school. He chuckles at this, and we both begin working again. He then starts to make small talk, asking which school I go to, how old I am, is one of the construction workers my dad, etc. I'm not in the mood for small talk, but I do my best to answer him politely, while also being very short with him, hoping he will realize I don't really want to be bothered. When I answer his question about my age with "I'm 16", he looks intensely at me and says, "You're 16 and already married?" My mind immediately goes into what the fuck mode. Why would he think that statement was a perfectly normal one to make, despite the fact that it had nothing to do with our conversation? He sees my confused expression and grins, clarifying, "Your ring." At the time, I had a silver band ring that I wore on my left ring finger, giving the appearance of a wedding ring. I simply wore it there because that's the finger it fit best. I'm immediately uncomfortable with how things are going. I'm at least 15 feet away from him, and he still, somehow, noticed that small ring on my finger. Him questioning me about marriage was already unsettling in itself. I'm a 16-year-old kid, and he's old enough to be my dad. I explain that it's not a wedding ring. He laughs at that and says, "All us men should consider ourselves lucky then." I scrunch my face up, unsure of what he means or whether or not it's an insult. He explains, "Because you're still single, I mean." Officially uncomfortable, I turn back around and begin furiously cleaning the stairs and praying that this guy finishes what he's doing so he can leave. I refuse to move down the stairs any further until he's gone. I don't want to get any closer to him. Several uncomfortable questions later, the guy seems to finish and leaves. I breathe a sigh of relief and work on finishing the stairs. About 10 minutes later, the guy comes back with a cold bottle of Mountain Dew and holds it right in front of my face. I gingerly take it, and he says, "It's pretty hot in here. You look like you needed it." "Thanks," I replied. He then goes back to working in the stairwell while I just sit there and stare at the drink in my hand. It was strange. There's no electricity or AC in the building yet, so it's very dang hot. The church is in the middle of nowhere, no gas stations or stores are close by. There's no vending machines out there either. It's towards the end of the day, so the ice in everyone's coolers has long since melted, and all their personal drinks are hot. Yet this Mountain Dew is cold as ice. Cautiously, I open the bottle and quickly realize that the lid has already been cracked from someone opening it. They obviously try to reclose it in an attempt to hide the fact that it's been opened. I peer into the bottle and see little granules of something at the bottom of it. I quickly made the decision not to drink any of this. The guy has been watching me and questions why I haven't drank any yet. I just flat out ignore him and act like I didn't hear his question. Out of the corner of my eye, I realize that he hasn't brought any of his tools back with him, and that at first glance he looks like he's working. But when I pay close attention, I see that he's not actually doing anything. He's just making the motions of doing work while watching me when he thinks I'm not looking. He keeps insisting I have some of the drink because it's so hot, and I look like I'm gonna overheat. When he is unable to get a response from me, he changes tactics and attempts small talk again while I frantically try to think of how to get out of this situation. This part of the building is completely deserted. It's why I chose to clean those stairs first, so I wouldn't have to work around the other workers. The chances of someone walking through are non-existent. You're working here with your dad, right? Who's your dad? A maniacal grin spreads across my face as I realize he's just given me a way out. I answer, Kelvin, the owner of this construction business. His face turns pale and in a reedy voice says, "Oh, the big boss, huh?" Yep. He quickly decides he has somewhere else to be. He didn't attempt to interact with me for the rest of the day, but I did catch him staring intently at me whenever we were in the same room. I threw away the Mountain Dew, so Steve Buscemi look-alike, let's not meet again. 2. Please be aware the following story contains frequent profanity. If this is something that offends you, please skip to the next story. My mom had been needing her own place, lives at work, for a very long time, so she decided to go studio hunting. She eventually found this one place that seemed pleasant enough, and was out by horses and ranches. After a few weeks, I started to notice how run the fuck down the place was compared to the neighboring homes. This was in an obviously well-off community, but the property in question wasn't taken care of for shit. Fire hazards everywhere. There had just been a raging fire right over the hill from us, and the condition of the place was god-awful, unkempt and neglected. I knew my mom would go for it either way, and if I didn't show my encouragement that I'd look like an asshole, so I told her to do it. As soon as I met the daughter of the owner of the property, red flag. She was tweaky as fuck, even though she was friendly. The place gave me the fucking creeps. But sure, whatever, Mom. We then proceeded to meet the father, Gene, the owner of the property. Fuck no. Dude says, "Can you take a seat right there in front of me? I can't see well. Stop saying hi to the dog, it gets plenty of attention. Now isn't the time. Call me Mr. Nothing else. His fucking teaching name. Now ladies, tell me about yourselves." Red goddamn fucking flag. Nailed him as a creeper 2 fucking sentences in. Now hear me out. If I wasn't at such a fucked up place in my head that summer, I would have not been as much of a pushover about the situation as I was. I was majorly depressed and anxious, which takes away all your ability to function as a human, and I was trying to do my mom a solid. Oops. So, forgive me for not running the other way sooner. Anyway, I'm always homeless, sorta out of choice, and my mom wasn't ready to move in until a month later, but had to snag it now so no one else would. Therefore, she opted me to stay there alone and watch her precious shit, which in the end seemed to be more value to her than my life was. Thanks, Mom. With no lights, one dim living room light, and a giant open hole in the front door, and no working lock, and I had no getaway car at the time, I start staying there right off the bat. On the first night, the neighbor walks right into the house at 11 p.m. without knocking, after sending his pit bull first. I was lucky that dog was friendly. Drunk as fuck, rambling about how he saw a light on, didn't know anyone had moved in and wanted to check if it was safe. Ding ding ding, red flag. Then he proceeds to tell me how he had to change the door in the kitchen for the landowners. Oh, he means the kitchen door that's directly next to the big old stains on the carpet. Yep. And how proud he is. He won't let go of the fact that he redid the kitchen door. I act friendly and slowly get the asshole to back the fuck out of my home. Then I go to bed. Let me brush up on the big stains really quick. Legitimately, there were 2 huge spots and 1 small stain on the carpet in that place. The 3 stains were so viciously cleaned that the carpet was rippled in those spots. The rest of the carpet was filthy too, but absolutely nowhere else showed any signs that anyone had ever even attempted cleaning it. Just those big dark stains, next to the kitchen that had just been refloored, in a studio that looks like it was left in a hurry. I don't know, I'm just saying. The next couple weeks get weird. The father, Gene, an 80 or 90-year-old man, rushing out of his room in nothing but his boxers to see me as I'm trying to help his daughter, Faith, who is 50 or 60-something, with chores. I'm being chased down by Faith, being all tweakery, and told that I can't drive my boyfriend's truck up the driveway anymore because it's damaging it. The truck weighed a mere 500 pounds more than the neighbours. Not a big deal. It's not going to break the driveway, and I had big heavy things to move. They wanted me to walk from the far-off desolate and dark as fuck lot on the other side of the road and down the street, right by their tweaker-ass son's shitty trailer, who is on parole and living on the property illegally, to get home every night. When I disagreed, the daughter started a routine of running out of the house as soon as I'd get home and blocking the driveway with anything she could, but mostly her body. I have video of her yelling, "Why are you trying to run me over? Look out for the bike! Why are you trying to run his bike over?" There was no bike, and she was literally throwing herself in front of my vehicle. They often let their aggressive pit bull run around off-leash around my foster chihuahua. I had to carry her above my head to safety one time. Since day one, they would come over every morning at 8 a.m. asking for favors. The old man would ride around on his tractor day and night, often in nothing but his boxers, doing nothing. Tons of random shit happened in this short span of time. But more importantly, now this is where I get mixed up in terms of sequence, since it all happened so quickly. This was all in the span of 6 weeks or so. Faith was calling, visiting me every single day. I eventually told her she needed to leave me alone. I have extreme anxiety and was there to decompress. She couldn't wrap her tweaker head around the idea of me not giving a fuck about her problems, and rapidly became irritable. Within a week of me asking her to leave me be, for Christ's sake, $1,200 a month for this shit, she posted a totally fucked and illegitimate notice to vacate. Huh. Considering we just moved in, I mean, seriously, had just finished moving in, I said fuck no. I'm staying until the end of the month, since my mom paid for this. This was at the beginning of the month. I started to look into legalities, calling lawyers and even housing safety inspection. Or whatever, I can't remember the name. Absolutely fucking no one would help with my case, even though I was obviously being harassed and illegally kicked out. I seemed to know more about the state's tenants' rights than anyone I talked to. They sent one lady, Cindy, from housing inspection to look at the property. And she fucking instantly deemed it fit for demolition, that's right. She said that the property wasn't even fit for human living. I agreed fully with this, but to hear a professional say it felt so good, but alas, that's how Mickey Mouse they had the place. Faith had a fucking tweaky fit and stormed off during a serious discussion between my mother, me, and the housing inspector about the problems on the property. Cindy said the place should be demolished. Yet she quit the case 30 minutes after signing the need for demolition papers. I don't know technical names, sorry guys, making her statement invalid. I can't even begin to tell you guys how not fucking legit this next part is. The next inspector they send over ignores everything I say. The entire time he is pointing out everything that Cindy has said wasn't okay and turning it into, "This is absolutely fine. They don't need to change this." Electrical outlets with no border and exposed wires, yeah right. He says the property is literally fine and that they are well allowed to rent it out. The goddamn bathroom drains lead to outside, for Christ's sake. It is illegal to have tenants while all these housing codes are being broken. but this guy acted like he was straight up paid off, I kid you not. If this doesn't at all seem sketch to you, maybe it will the more I go into detail about the family. So all this drama is going down, so fun, and I decided to end a short break I was having with my boyfriend. I didn't feel safe at all, so he starts staying with me. Soon after, I get notes on my door stating how no one other than me is allowed on the property. I say fuck that, and he continues to stay with me. I have a horrible feeling one night, but nonetheless, boyfriend goes to get pizza for us because I was a starving-to-death pizza addict. Within 5 to 10 minutes of him leaving, the son, I'll call him Pete, is at the front door banging on it with something heavy like a crowbar. Bang! Bang! He was repeatedly dragging it down the length of the door and then banging on it after each scrape, yelling profanities at me. It started driving me insane. Why? Because if he stepped 1 foot inside my home, I was convinced I was going to have to kill someone that night. Me and my boyfriend started doing some research on these people, right before all this Pete shit started happening. My first search was on a pedophile site, you know, find the pedo in your neighborhood like websites. Big fucking red dot on the property. The old man. Numerous fucking accounts of child molestation and possible trafficking. John, Jean's son, Faith's brother, Faith, Pete, the neighbor who busted my door, the neighbor's son. They were all in on it, whatever it was. You got this crummy fucking vibe from everyone there. The neighbor's son would spy on me through their living room window. I stopped going outside to have cigarettes because of the people on the property. I'd also like to note that Cindy's brother kept hurting his fucking neck and spine like 3 times in a row. Different incidents, same injury. I can't help but speculate that either the family was causing him to have these accidents, or that he was scamming an insurance company. I can only imagine it was mere coincidence that he died long before anyone else. This guy was also a convicted pedophile, and had charges against him like the others in the family. This whole family was known for child abductions and rapes. The old man was a school teacher. He fucking owned the school too, or was the principal or some shit, and had something like 20 charges of molestation made against him around the 1980s to 1990s. Yeah, seriously. Back to good old Pete banging on my door. He eventually stops for a moment. I call the cops to tell them someone is breaking into my home with a weapon, clearly threatening me through my front door. They tell me I should have called the non-emergency line and switch me over without saying another word. Yes, this is the real life right now. I have never had a pleasant experience with cops. I tell them that I need an officer at my home, and that I obviously don't feel safe. I give them my address. Then they start trying to convince me that I don't fucking actually need help, even though this guy is on parole and not technically allowed anywhere on the property, and banging on my goddamn door calling me things like bitch and cunt. You kidding me? I give up on 911, hang up the phone and prepare to take matters into my own hands. Pete grabs a ladder, climbs up to my window on the 2nd story, and starts banging on the glass. I realize he has been watching me as I was on the phone, and tells me to let him in. I hide in the bathroom waiting for my boyfriend. Mind you, this is all just a brief 10 or so minutes. Pete begins going at the front door again. This time he's trying to pry open the nailed shut dog opening at the bottom of the door, big enough for a full-size man to crawl through. I can now see his crazed face staring back at me. He keeps shouting things like, "I know you're in there, you cunt," and "Let me in. I just want to talk." Once I see his face, and it is official that he's trying to get into my home, I begin reaching for my boyfriend's Browning 9mm. As soon as this piece of fuck is about to hear a clip being loaded, Pete fucks off and makes a beeline to his trailer, as if he himself had a bad feeling. I was about ready to fucking kill this guy after knowing what his family is involved with. My boyfriend shows up, not but 3 minutes later. So yeah, biggest moral of the story is fuck the Los Angeles Police Department. I made an in-person statement asking to make some sort of documentary report that I had been threatened and basically attacked, and they told me it wasn't a case for the police. What? I seriously could have been killed and or raped. Also, fun fact, A couple days after I was finally out of there, a fatal shooting took place about a quarter mile down the road from the address I was staying. Remarkably, the cops managed to show up for that incident. To be honest, I feel as though there is a huge fucking conspiracy behind all this, considering the worth of the property, multi-million, and the fact that cops refused to help me. But all I know for sure is that these people are fucked. 3. It all started one day when my dad and I were walking about the field together. He was a big tree enthusiast and loved to share this knowledge with me. While walking, we stopped, and he began examining the ground. A beer can and a bunch of old cigarettes. And what's that? Oh right, a big pile of crap. Human crap. My dad was perturbed, to say the least. I remember him walking back in the house and telling my mom, and then coming back to warn me that it's obvious someone has been lurking in our yard, and that I should stay inside at night and be careful. This scared the piss out of me. Avoiding the obvious poo puns. This is also about the time that I learned what a pedophile was, as my parents were hyper concerned about that. I should add, at this time, my parents were worried that someone was watching our house, because where we found this bout of treasure, the person would have had a great view of our living room, full of large, usually uncovered windows. Fast forward a week, and good old Dad comes across a similar stash of cigs, beer, and, yes, more feces, but this time, a little closer to our neighbor's yard. Curious. This continued a couple of weeks, until one night my dad caught the guy in action. My dad, the protective guy that he is, kept a lookout for this pooping Tom, as he and my mom so cleverly dubbed him, and saw a shadowed figure in the field, smoking a cig. My dad's first instinct was to grab his gun, and he walked out to this person in the field. My mom, on the other hand, called the cops. I'm not entirely sure my dad had a plan, but I reckon he was mostly concerned with protecting his wife and daughter, and if anything, wanted to figure out what the F was going on. When he got close enough to this person, he saw that it was an older gentleman, 50s, and he had his pants down. My dad caught him as he was taking a dump in our field, but he was not facing our house. Instead, he was facing our neighbor's house, and he was gazing off into their lit windows. Needless to say, the cops show up. The guy is apprehended, and we later find out that he was peeping on the two little girls around my age that lived next door to us. As they had their own bedroom upstairs, often left the light on at night, and it was easy to see into their room. So the guy would camp out in our lawn with cigs and a few brewskis. And he was so captivated with those two girls that he wouldn't even go back home to crap. He would just do it on our lawn. I'm not sure if he did anything else out there, and that's certainly not something my dad would have told me, but for fuck's sake, how ridiculous. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 179. Thank you very much to everyone who allowed their stories to be used in this video. And can I just say, before anyone corrects me, yes, I did pronounce his name correctly. I looked it up. That's how he pronounces it. Still not back to normal, I'm afraid. We'll keep the schedule quite loose for now. I'll just post when I can. Hopefully I can build back up to daily uploads within, well, the next couple of months. Fingers and toes and ears and everything crossed. And with that, I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.